Back on Open Line on a Thursday night as we talk about climate change, the potential impacts of wildlife here in Tennessee, and much more. And I want to go to the phones because David has been holding. David, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind, sir?
Okay. I live in the I-440 corridor.
Yeah.
And every year during the spring and summer, the crows, or if you prefer to call them ravens, attack and annihilate songbird nests and squirrel nests.
Wow.
And I would rather have the increase of songbirds and squirrels and decrease the population of crows. If they want to eat garbage or eat roadkill out in the street, that's fine. But when they're annihilating their nests, songbird nests, and their offspring, they'll crush the eggs, they'll try to take the eggs back to their nest, and they'll drop them. And they prefer to grab the baby birds and the baby squirrels. And I've gone outside 7 times today to shoo the stupid things off because they're attacking every nest in this neighborhood. So why does the TWRA not want us to eliminate crows or to hunt them?
All right, David, hang up and we'll listen to what Pandy has to say about that.
Well, there is a crow hunting season, so they are a game animal within season. Probably not year-round. I'm a non-game biologist, but there is a crow season, so we're not anti-hunting crow. And if it's on your property and you feel like it's doing degradation to your property, you can get a degradation permit, and you can shoot a firearm in city limits if it's within that degradation permit.
That's frustrating too with a predatory species like that, and like he said, you know, songbirds. Who wouldn't want? You know, and the squirrels, and you want to you kind of feel like they're your neighbors and you want to protect them.
Now that's not something that we do, that our wildlife officers can do. It's just because it would be too much. We don't have that capacity. But within USDA, you could call Wildlife Services and explain your situation and see if you could get a depredation permit and see if they would give that to you. But yeah, and there is a crow season. Good information there, David. Thank you. Non-game,
737+ is the phone number if you'd like to call in as we discuss climate change and potential impacts here in the state of Tennessee. I want to read some of this. This is issued to us through the TWRA and the Nature Conservancy and also the National Wildlife Federation as they talk about warmer temperatures and changes in precipitation. You were talking about what, you know, development and disease are two things that you've seen over the years. Warmer temperatures and changes in precipitation could disrupt our state's delicate forest and aquatic ecosystems. And it goes on specifically, Tennessee's forests are expected to undergo changes in forest growth and composition, with some tree types expanding at the expense of others. Some high elevation forest types could be dramatically impacted or lost entirely. Brook trout populations are expected to decline. Migratory songbirds, we just heard from David about his songbirds, may alter their ranges, with some species disappearing from Tennessee altogether. Larger floods and longer droughts could cause increased erosion, reduced water supply, and the spread of invasive species. And I like the way this is worded, could cause, because we're just not 100% sure and we can't predict the future, but we can take some positive steps. Without, you know, I think the two that a lot of people worry about is, well, how is this going to impact? We can't stop people from coming here, and we're going to keep developing. How can we have the two go hand in hand? Well, you know, yes, we're going to have continued development, but maybe like in Rutherford County, I know there already are steps in place to protect. David talked about the I-440 corridor. I mean, that 440, I think the final loop there connecting Dixon into Williamson through Williamson County took years because there were many environmental concerns there, and they wanted to make sure it was done correctly with the least environmental impact as possible.
Absolutely. So luckily we do have a state wildlife action plan, and that state wildlife action plan allowed us to see where our, and we don't like to use this word, but we have to sometimes, where our biodiversity hotspots are. And where we have fragile ecosystems, and we can take that into planners. You know, county planners, and we can ask them to consider this hotspot when they're developing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot easier permitting-wise, developing-wise, if you can, if necessary, just slightly reroute, go around this hot spot.
Right.
And even in Rutherford County, I had even forgotten that this happened, but somebody patted me on the back and reminded that we did this about 10 years ago. And that is that there's a salamander, a streamside salamander, that we have listed as endangered, one of our endangered species in the state, and it lives in Rutherford County. And we went to the county planning commission and asked them to expand the buffers along stream corridors to protect this salamander by a large amount, and they did. And so, that's how we can work together.
And it's about information and education.
That's right.
Making sure people are aware of what's going on.
And what TWRA especially tries to do is to let people know that we're not going to keep you from doing your project. We're going to work with you.
We're going to advise you.
We're going to advise you. We're going to work with you. We're going to help you adapt to what the adaptations that you need to. Please come to us early.
Make recommendations.
Make recommendations and things that require work around streams. The Department of Environment and Conservation is a regulatory.
Well, we've seen over the years, just in the past 20 to 30 years, how developers, starting with the architecture and design of buildings, how we now know they're LEED certified buildings, which is a standard for buildings that have used renewable resources and are just greener, more green friendly buildings, the way they're built, renewable resources and recyclable materials, and on and on and on. Music City Center is a great example. So we know that's taking place, and perhaps, hopefully, more developers are more keenly aware of that before they go into a space. They know to reach out and get more information.
And like I was saying, TDEC is the regulatory administration, but we get to comment on every permit that has to do with the stream, and we work very close with TDEC, and they allow us to comment on their permits, and they honor our comments, and so we know the wildlife, they know the permitting, the habitat, the resources, and we try to work very closely on working with folks that are developing or needing to put in a road or whatever it is. If it's a Nashville crayfish, which is our federally endangered species, which is also state endangered, and there's work to be done on Mill Creek or 7 Mile Creek, which is right in the heart of Nashville. We still allow projects like that to carry forward. We just ask them to do crayfish sweeps and to not do it right during their breeding season. And then when they do work in the stream, we actually go out there with buckets and help them scoop them all up and take them upstream, and until they're done with their work, and then we let them go again. So we can all work together on that. And then on the buildings, one of the huge things that we're seeing is more stormwater, because we do have warmer winter. I mean, that's the trend right now. We have warmer winters, wetter winters, and the more impervious, surfaces that we have, the more runoff we're going to have. So those pervious, structures, the green roofs that absorb water instead of just flushing it off immediately. So we'll have to come up with some really intricate stormwater management plans for the future.
Environmental innovation, we've proven we can do some really remarkable things, and making some key changes.
Absolutely.
All right, we got another caller, and it is Lucy. Lucy, always good to hear from you. What's on your mind?
Hey, y'all. Yeah, I got a couple things. First, the blue jays, have they pretty much disappeared because of West Nile virus? Because, they're a pretty bird, but I've seen them go up and just destroy cardinal nests and stuff like that. But I've seen some pretty big ones around here. It seems like since West Nile's hit, they've disappeared. That's my first question.
And what's your second?
Oh, my other one is about the deer wasting disease. You're talking about climate change. I was just wondering that, since the climate, you just said we're having warmer and wetter winters, and down around West Tennessee, where I heard there's an outbreak of the wasting disease with the deer, that I'm just wondering if it's a fungus, because they're getting closer to the ground and this fungus is growing all the time, because I know funguses can do some weird things in human beings. You know, it can even make people hallucinate. So get into your brain and cause meningitis. So I'm wondering if that's what it is. So that and the
blue jays.
And one other thing, pin oaks and leafhopper bugs and the rest of our trees, should pin oaks not be planted? I'll hang up and listen to y'all
here. Got a lot to cover there. Thank you.
Okay, so bluebirds, I have not seen a decline personally with bluebirds on my property. Luckily, we do breeding bird surveys, across the state, and that's one of our oldest surveys that we've been doing, and that's not been being observed in our breeding bird surveys. So sometimes things like that are local. It's you see trends and changes locally, and it might not be happening statewide. So on my farm, I'm still seeing the blue jays. West Nile disease, did come in, and we were dealing with it. I mean, humans were getting it. Some of us might have had West Nile disease and never knew it. You have a fever, cold-like symptoms, and it could have been. But they did have West Nile disease, but that seems to have faded a bit. Either they got immune to it, or it's just not as big of an issue right now. And we did do a lot of mosquito control.
What about the deer?
So the chronic wasting disease in West Tennessee. I am so proud of our wildlife division, because they started working on chronic wasting disease way before it ever got to Tennessee, and they had a chronic wasting disease plan early on, and so much of it is communication. West Nile disease is a prion. So, or chronic wasting disease is a prion, which is an unusual, and so is mad cow disease. So
prion meaning?
It's a new form of disease, and so a prion is proteins that are wildly developed on themselves in different ways. Incredibly resistant type of disease. We can hardly get temperatures hot enough to kill prions. They are very long living. A deer can die, and its carcass can lie there, and if another deer comes along and is in that same area, they can get that disease. So it's an incredibly contagious,
spreads quickly.
Quickly spreading. But like I said, we started testing for chronic wasting disease early, and so we have found it early, and we have kind of a task force that we increased the hunting season in those areas, broadened the hunting season. We mapped it out immediately. So we've got a GIS department at TWA that folks don't know about. We mapped it out. We saw where it was. We created those circles and increased the hunts, and so hopefully we're going to at least keep it at a manageable level. But we're dealing with it.
So far, so good. You think? I mean,
well,
manageable?
we've got cases. We've got cases. And right now, every deer that someone wants to get tested in that red zone, we are testing, and then we call them back and say where they did test.
West Tennessee is the red zone.
West Tennessee,
from what I remember. Okay,
Hardeman County, that area.
We got to take another break, everybody. We will come back. We've got a couple of callers on hold. We appreciate it. We'll be back with more Open Line after this.